If you love movies and movie discussions, you've come to the right place. Who am I, you ask? I am the Wiz, and I'm here today to review the 2022 Star Trek film, Star Trek Nemesis, starring, the usual cast, and Tom Hardy. Yeah, a young Tom Hardy. Directed by Stuart Baird. Captain Jean-Luc Picard, played by Patrick Stewart, diverts the Starship Enterprise from its scheduled trip to Commander Riker's and Counselor Troy's wedding to negotiate a peace treaty with the Romulans. Picard is shocked when Shinzon, played by Tom Hardy, who is the new praetor of the Romulans, admits to being a clone of him. When the crew members discover a break-in on their computer, they are forced into a life-or-death battle to stop Shinzon's warbird before it can destroy the Earth. It just seems to me the next-gen films needed viewers to already have familiarity with these characters to actually get the maximum enjoyment, because I refuse to believe that these characters are as uninteresting as they seem to be in these movies. There are fans of Star Trek who have debates over who is better, Kirk and Picard, and after watching the movies, I'm sitting here going, how does anyone pick Picard? Really? Because honestly, compared to Kirk, he's kind of boring. But then again, there's been like 7 seasons of this series, so obviously there's stuff there that people love about Picard. And to me, it just feels like if I haven't watched those series, I'm not getting that from these movies. But onto the movie itself. I think this is a very bloated but enjoyable action romp. Some of the best scenes in this film are action-based. Dogfights, shootouts. I think the story involving Shinzon and Picard is not really all that interesting. In fact, it's kind of boring. And it has a young Tom Hardy, which was really surprising to see, in this role that is little more than just a stereotypical megalomaniac. It's kind of boring. And it's supposed to be an interesting villain because he's a clone of Picard. I guess that's the other problem I have, is because I don't see what is great about Picard. So making a clone of him is just like, okay, so you're a clone of someone I don't give a shit about. Okay, cool. But I will say the action is actually entertaining, but for it to be the most entertaining part, I think is kind of a step back. And it's not that good. It's just enough to be like, yeah, okay, I had a decent time. Onto the story, I think the ending is exciting, but there's no emotional payoff in this. Something happens at the end of this movie where you're clearly supposed to feel for a certain character. But again, because I'm only familiar with the movies, I really didn't feel much of anything in this. The ending is interesting. It's actually about an hour's worth of action, which the action's good. It's entertaining. Because there's not much of a story and characters in this, that's kind of what you have to rely on. I just find it surprising that in the first 6 films, the clear strength of those films were the characters. The charisma of Kirk, the back and forth between Spock and Bones and Kirk. The crew there was just much more interesting. I actually had more of an emotional connection to them. And I think that was the strength of those films and what makes them really good. I guess the best way to think of it is, it just seems like fan service stories with some good action to it. Like, the action is an improvement from the other films, but with everything else, it's a step down to me. And again, if you guys are familiar with Next Generation, you love these films, I understand. Coming from someone who has no experience with the Next Gen series, I just found them kind of plain. I mean, they're interesting enough to be entertaining, but they just don't hold a candle to the other films from the original cast. So overall, I am going to tacitly recommend Star Trek Nemesis, but I do understand why a lot of people think of this as the worst of the next-gen films. The action is good in this movie. I think the action is what makes it entertaining, and the film is chock full of it. But the story and the characters are just not interesting and compelling at all. It has a really weird performance by Tom Hardy. I just think the villain that he is given is just not a good villain at all, and he just plays an egomaniacal megalomaniac that is just not interesting at all, especially with the twist that is involved with him. So overall, I will tacitly recommend Star Trek Nemesis. Now, if you want my full review on this movie, you can go to my website at IamTheWiz.com. You'll have my full written review right on the site, along with a link to the video that has this review that you've just listened to. Thank you for listening to this review. If you want to know what we're reviewing in the next couple of days, you can look on the screen right now to see what's coming up next. If you liked what you heard, go ahead and leave a like on this video. If you want to discuss your opinion on the film or the review itself, please leave a comment. And if you want to hear more, subscribe to the channel. Thank you again for listening. I will talk to you next time.